So it's that time again when people start making prognostications for the new year. What are the big trends going to be for 2018? Well, don't ask me, I have absolutely no idea. But one phenomenon I think is worth keeping an eye on is the continued backlash against social media companies. But surely you jest, you say. Everybody loves their social media apps, don't they? Can't wait to check my mentions, see who's updated their Facebook status, or to upload your latest selfie to Instagram or whatever the hell you do over there. I have no idea, I'm not on it. But I'm not suggesting the greatest threat is a revolt from users, although that's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm talking about the increased amount of scrutiny being applied to these social media behemoths. Recall back in mid-2016 when Mark Zuckerberg came out and admitted that Facebook's editing process has a chilling effect on conservative news and reflected absolute bias against right-wing news sources. Well, of course, the mostly left-wing mainstream media didn't pay much attention to that, but not too long after they were up in arms about Facebook allowing Russian-linked accounts to run election ads, resulting in execs from Facebook, Google and Twitter fronting the Senate to explain themselves just last month. Now, of course, there's a large element of political theatre to this, but theatre aside, in an era of divisive partisanship, this is one issue that both sides of the aisle seem to have some agreement on, that something needs to be done about the power and concentration of these giant tech companies. Steve Bannon, while still part of the Trump administration, argued that Facebook and Google should be regulated like utilities as they've become essential elements of 21st century life. And these companies are being attacked from all angles. Google has now been hit twice this year by advertiser strikes on YouTube for allowing the posting of inappropriate content, with advertisers demanding better vetting processes for video uploads, the repercussions of which I know only too well. Facebook and Twitter are being threatened by various governments around the world with large fines if they don't fall into line with new laws. For example, in the UK, Twitter and Facebook could reportedly face fines of up to £20 million if they fail to tackle cyberbullying. Here in Australia, those same companies are facing fines of up to $500,000 for failing to remove or prevent the dissemination of revenge porn. Not exactly a new issue, but the Australian Tax Office, in collaboration with regulatory agencies in other countries, are ramping up efforts to crack down on tech companies like Google and Facebook to make them pay more tax. And then there is the related issue of how social media is affecting mental health, particularly of young people. This 2016 study from the University of Pittsburgh says that young adults who are heavy users of social media, defined as using it more than 2 hours a day, are 2.7 times more likely to be depressed. A survey of 1,500 young people in the UK ranked Instagram as the worst social media for mental health, with participants citing increases in anxiety, depression and body image issues while using the app. Apparently, constantly looking at images of people who are better looking, richer and pretending to have more fun than you is depressing. Who knew? This article, titled "Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation?" appeared in The Atlantic back in September. Amongst other research, the author cited a survey funded by the National Institute of Drug Abuse that has asked 12th graders since 1975 and 8th and 10th graders since 1991 questions about how happy they are and how much of their leisure time they spend on various activities. And the author notes, the results could not be clearer. Teens who spend more time than average on screen activities are more likely to be unhappy, and those who spend more time than average on non-screen activities are more likely to be happy. There's not a single exception. All screen activities are linked to less happiness, and all non-screen activities are linked to more happiness. And as I outlined in a previous video with Jonathan Haidt and Jordan Peterson, social media is having the most adverse effect on young girls. Boys' depressive symptoms increased by 21% from 2012 to 2015, while girls increased by 50%, more than twice as much. This generation, labelled iGen, is much less likely to hang out with friends, less likely to date, more likely to feel lonely, and less likely to get enough sleep. Facebook even admitted recently that it poses mental health risks, but it also said that more engagement can improve well-being. Way to talk out of both sides of your mouth. Probably the most scathing critique of Facebook came from Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, who was quoted recently as saying, "The unintended consequences of a network when it grows to 1 billion or 2 billion people, it literally changes your relationship with society, with each other. It probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you more likes and comments. It's a social validation feedback loop, exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. The inventors, creators, it's me, it's Mark Zuckerberg, it's Kevin Systrom on Instagram. It's all of these people understood this consciously, and we did it anyway. And the studies about the effects on mental health are only just starting to come out because we're now only just getting the data. So expect more and more of them in the years ahead. Now, I mentioned that a user revolt is unlikely, but is it really? We're living in the era of the backlash, Brexit, Trump. This year has seen the great moral panic around sexual harassment. Is it that much of a leap to think we won't see another moral panic and backlash over what social media is doing to the mental health of young people? Now, you might think this is all overblown. Why can't kids just switch off their devices if it's making them feel bad? And why can't adults exercise more control over how their kids use social media and how much time they spend on it? Well, it doesn't really matter if a backlash gets going. The sexual harassment panic of 2017 proves that common sense and rational thinking go out the window. Never underestimate the penchant for jumping on a bandwagon, especially when you have several hugely profitable corporations to point your finger at and a large pool of vulnerable victims to exploit. In this case, young adolescents and adults. So what to do about it? Well, there's a lot of talk about using antitrust laws to break up these tech giants in the same way those laws were used against Microsoft almost 20 years ago. As someone that leans libertarian myself, I prefer to let the market take care of it. And there's certainly much more competition today in the tech sector than in the days of Microsoft. I understand the argument that it often takes a long time for the market to get around to correcting itself. But still, I'd rather not see government intervention. This article from Bloomberg points out that while Google, Apple and Amazon have captured significant shares of their respective markets, size alone is not enough to alarm regulators. The primary focus is on whether there is harm to customers from reduced competition and higher prices. This article on thehill.com, written by a conservative, argues for breaking up tech giants like Google and Facebook on the basis that they are biased by suppressing conservative news sites and stories in search results and sometimes blacklisting them. As the author notes, thus this tactic sends politically incorrect views to Internet Siberia, where few will hear the dissenters except their fellow Google Gulag inmates. The National Review Online disagrees. CNBC thinks it's spectacularly wrong. But whether or not you think it's a good idea, the climate of backlash and outrage that we currently inhabit means that these companies are susceptible to another moral panic enabled by politicians looking to score political points. So, will social media be the great moral panic of 2018, or will the outrage backlash machine find other issues? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.